share a little bit from the book and then do a couple practices with you and try to end around 7:30 because I understand that's the commitment here is for half an hour, so I will do my best. I do not have time to go into the premise of the book, but the basic premise is that for those of us who get stuck on some of the traditional notions of God, we're really stuck more on a metaphor than on God, and that metaphor is God is a big person, and often a male commanding person. And there's nothing wrong with God, that metaphor, but it's limiting if it's the only one we have. And so my book explores different metaphors for the divine. I'm just going to show you a copy of the cover. This is the cover. So it's called God is Here, Reimagining the Divine. And in the book, I explore metaphors largely from Jewish tradition, although many of them are from the Hebrew Bible, so they're shared in the Christian faith as well. Many from nature, water, rock, voice, cloud, one rabbinic metaphor, makom, place, and then also a couple modern metaphors. So I thought what I do in our half hour together is share a little bit from the book and then a couple practices. And really what I've done is I feel like channeled some very ancient wisdom, which is we can encounter the divine through these various metaphors. And when we enter into the metaphor, it opens us up to different kinds of experiences. And we need many metaphors to get at the aspect of human experience, which is, the encounter with the sacred, that's a very large realm, and that no one metaphor will do. So I wanted to start with God as water, which is the first metaphor I explore in the book. So I thought as I read, I just wanted to put up these photos, and you all can just sort of muse on what water evokes for you as I read a few pages. I grew up in Maryland, where access to water was never an issue. There was plenty of rain year-round, and so much humidity in the summer you could practically drink the air. Then, at the age of 18, I went to spend a year in Israel, living on a kibbutz in the Negev desert. Suddenly, water was a precious resource. Rain only fell in the winter months, and in the orchards where I worked, the trees were sustained by miles of drip irrigation tubes. It was hot but dry in the summer, and we Americans had to be constantly reminded to drink. I remember our first hike in the desert, stopping to take a drink from my canteen. I didn't even realize until the water hit my mouth how incredibly thirsty I was. It is hard to express how deeply satisfying that canteen of lukewarm water was in that moment. That experience comes to mind as I read biblical passages where the author speaks of thirsting for God and drinking from a godly well or stream. And these are some of those verses. How precious is your love, O God. Humanity is nourished from the riches of your house. You give them drink from the stream of your delight. Elohim, you are my God. I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. As the deer longs for water streams, so does my soul long for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When I think of my father, I'd written earlier about my father walking the Calvert Cliffs after his first heart attack. When I think of my father walking along the water's edge by the Calvert Cliffs or paddling his kayak on the Potomac River, I wonder if his soul was drinking in some kind of spiritual sustenance, even as his physical self was enjoying the literal waters. I know that this metaphor of a thirsty soul resonates with me. It is an accurate description of those times when I feel spiritually dry, as if some essential source of nourishment has been cut off. In those moments, I am like that deer in the Judean desert, searching for an afik, a channel in the earth that fills when it rains. At these times, God is the source from which my thirsty soul can be quenched, if only I am willing to drink. In the words of the prophet Isaiah, I can be like that orchard in the Negev, nourished by godly waters. Adonai shall guide you always and satisfy your soul in drought, and you shall be like a watered garden. As I first began looking for metaphors for God in the Bible, I was astonished at the abundance of water images. In addition to the images of God watering the people like a garden, and the spiritual seeker desiring to drink from God, I discovered what I call water names for the divine. In the book of Isaiah, we find this passage: "Hear, God of my liberation, I will trust and not be afraid. For Yah Adonai is my strength and my song, and has been my liberation. Joyfully you shall draw water from the well of liberation." Here God is described as the prophet's Yeshua, which can be translated as liberation or salvation. Isaiah then instructs us to draw water from the well of Yeshua, referring back to this experience of God as liberation. Well of liberation is a beautiful metaphor for the divine, an endless source from which we can draw and drink. What liberation or salvation might mean is left up to us. I like to think of it as liberation from suffering, from the internal struggles that confine me, as well as the external challenges I face. To draw upon the well of liberation is to have access to something beyond me and deep within me, which I can have faith is always there, even when I'm not entirely aware of it. Like finding water in a well, I may need to dig to access this sense of liberation, to search deep within myself, to draw it up. In the book of Jeremiah, we find a different water name for God in a verse where the prophet excoriates the people for going astray. Quote, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fount of living waters, and dug cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns, which can hold no water." Fount of living waters, what a beautiful metaphor for that which sustains us spiritually. Here the prophet warns of seeking nourishment from broken cisterns, from those things that we mistakenly believe can nourish our spirits, perhaps money or fame or accumulating stuff. In this metaphor, God is the living, accessible spring without which we cannot live. In the Psalms, Yud He Vav He, God is referred to as river of bliss and river of God, images of the divine as an overflowing source of abundance, nourishment, and delight. And these are some of the what I call water names of the divine in the Hebrew Bible. In thinking about God as water, the first thing I notice is how different the verbs describing godly action are in contrast to God as big, powerful person. Water does not command or judge. It flows and irrigates, nourishes and sustains. God as water invites us to identify when and how we become spiritually dry, and what it might mean to feel spiritually nourished. The divine can be found in those activities or experiences that function as our own well of salvation. And unlike God as distant emperor, God as water is not out there far from us, but right here within us. In the first chapter of Genesis, we are told that human beings are created B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image. About 70% of the human body is made of water. Our brains and hearts are approximately 80% water. What new meaning the phrase "made in God's image" takes on if we think of God as water and ourselves as made up largely of that godly substance. We are literally composed of sacred stuff. Water is precious and powerful and essential, as are we. So I wanted to do a chant with you. I wanted to go back to the pictures for a second, just to take a minute and maybe sit and just look at these and just see what these images of water call to mind for you. And then I wanted to do this chant with you. It's a chant written by my friend and colleague and teacher, Rabbi Sheffa Gold, and it's Psalm 42, verse 2. Just as the deer longs for water by the riverbank, so does my soul long for you, O God. And a piece of that verse in Hebrew, Hein nafshi ta'arog elecha, Elohim. So I'm going to sing it through a bunch of times. and you are invited to sing along. Rabbi Gold teaches that chanting is not singing, which means it doesn't matter if you can sing or not. And it really only works if you open your mouth and do it. So I can't hear you. Nobody can hear you unless they're in the room with you. So just let the chant take you. And once I've done it a few times, if you want to close your eyes, if you can, that's great. Or keep your eyes on the words. And we'll just chant for about, I don't know, about 3 minutes. So it goes like this. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohi. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohi. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohim. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohim. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohim. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohim. One last time. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Just as the deer longs for water by the river bank, so does my soul long for you, O God. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohim. Kein nafshi taru elecha Elohim. I invite you just to sit in the silence for a moment. See if a question arises, if any images arise. What does it mean to be like that deer, longing? And what do we drink that nourishes our spirits? I wanted to share one more metaphor, read a little bit more from the book, and then do a meditation with you. So another very common, yes, yes, Margaret, definitely. Um, Another very common metaphor for the divine in the Hebrew Bible, in Jewish liturgy, I believe in Christian liturgy as well, perhaps other liturgies of other traditions, is God as rock. In Hebrew, Sor or Selah. So I wanted to read a little bit about God as rock and then do a meditation with you. Many people I know are drawn to rocks, whether water-smooth pebbles on the beach or polished stones in a shop. One of the most beautiful and unique gifts, here it is, I received when I was ordained as a rabbi was a geode filled with bright blue crystals, which sits on my desk and reminds me that, as my friend wrote in her card, at the core we sparkle. Tucked into my closet is a box filled with stones and shells collected in my travels with my spouse, Gina. Taking a tiny bit of earth away from a place I visited always feels like a meaningful kind of connection. Reflecting on the appeal of rocks, Patricia Adams Farmer writes that, quote, "The energy of rocks is particularly mysterious and primordial. A rock radiates a personality of something strong and trustworthy, and forever present in the world, remaining long after we are gone. A rock is very sure of itself, of its past and its future, and it has reason to be. When we pick up a rock, we are not just holding a lump of minerals, we are holding a piece of eternity in our hands," end quote. One of the rock names of God in the Bible, Tsor Olamim, captures this sense of eternity. It is sometimes translated Rock of Ages and can also be translated as everlasting rock or ancient rock. When I first visited the Judean desert as a teenager, I was deeply moved by the landscape, which is dominated by limestone mountains from the late Cretaceous period, 70 to 80 million years old. I climbed one of the mountains near Ein Gedi, the area where King David took shelter, and found a rock outcropping that offered protection from the sun. Sitting beneath this rock, looking out at the Judean hills, I mused on what it must have been like to try to survive in such a harsh environment. The landscape felt paradoxically welcoming and challenging all at the same time. Viewing the layers upon layers of rock in a mountainside millions of years old, I felt the sense of vastness in time and in space that gives mountains their sacred quality. And I also experienced a deep sense of connection with the Earth's history. In his commentary on the opening verse of Psalm 95, "Let us sing to Adonai, make a joyful noise to the rock of our liberation," Dr. Arthur Walker Jones writes, quote, "Like all planets, Earth grew when stardust coalesced into larger and larger bodies of rock. Rock forms both earth and mountains. Lava from volcanoes creates land. Soil erodes from rock and allows for the growth of plants. Animals are made up of minerals from earth and rely on minerals from plants and other minerals and other animals. Rock surrounds and cradles the sea. In brief, Psalm 95 identifies God with earth and allows for an ecological understanding of the Creator as part of creation, as God in earth," end quote. The earth-centric understanding of God that Walker Jones celebrates here also helps connect us to an earthy experience of the sacred. We, like all animals, are made up of minerals from the earth. God in earth is also God in us. In Jewish tradition, God as rock is often associated with a powerful personal experience of the divine. Yud-He Vav-He is called my rock, rock of my strength, rock of our lives, and rock of my heart. I especially love this last epithet, Tsor Levavi, rock of my heart. It comes from a verse in Psalm 73, "My flesh and my heart fail. The rock of my heart and my portion is God forever." The teaching here is that alongside the limitations inherent in this human body and mind, there is something else that will not fail me. Rock of my heart suggests that somewhere within myself, I can access the qualities associated with rock, the personality of something strong and trustworthy that Farmer describes. A 19th century rabbi known as Malbim understood this verse to be referring to an aspect of divinity within each of us, the soul, which he calls, quote, the rock upon which the integrity of our heart stands. This inner rock is our own true godly nature. As such, its capacity is vast and unending, as expansive as the Mojave Desert, and as beautiful. So for each of the chapters of the book, I explore a metaphor and then I offer practices, because we have to sort of re-enliven these metaphors. Like we have them all over our liturgy, all over our sacred texts, but they're not sort of alive in our lives, I think, for many of us. For some folks it is. So for the water, water chapter, I have some water chants and a few other things. For this metaphor, I found this wonderful meditation written by someone I had studied with, Dr. Jill Schneiderman, who is, she calls herself a Buddhist Jew, and she's also a professor of geology. So this is a standing meditation. So if you have that accessible to you, thank you, Sandy. That's great. Yes, you got some rock inside you now. This is a standing meditation. If standing is accessible to you, I invite you to stand. If that's not accessible to you, then you can do this sitting. I'm going to sit so you can see me in the screen. But if you are standing, you're going to take mountain pose, which is a very simple, basic yoga pose. And in this pose, your feet are facing forward, about hip width apart. If you want to take your shoes off if you're wearing them so you can feel the ground. You can sort of spread out your toes and just very gently align your body. Bring your knees in line above your ankles, your hips in line with your knees. You can tuck your tailbone slightly. Bring your shoulders in line with your hips, sort of relax and drop your shoulder blades back. And you can bring your ears in line with your shoulders. So you're just feel yourself standing strong like a mountain, but relaxed. You don't want to be tense at all. And your arms can just be by your sides. And if you'd like, you can have your palms facing forward or facing your legs. So just relax your shoulders away from your ears. Let your chest open. Breathe into your belly and see if you can imagine your feet rooted in the ground. Just really feel yourself supported by the earth, even if you're a floor away from the earth or a few floors or many floors away from the earth. Just really imagine the earth holding you up in this moment. You yourself are a mountain, firm and strong. You can feel the power of Tsur Uzi, rock of my strength, within yourself. Just stand for a moment like this, just breathing in, breathing out, really feeling yourself grounded. So the meditation I'm about to lead you on was written by Dr. Schneiderman, and it's intended to awaken in us a sense of the vastness of geologic time, our own relative newness on the scene, and to experience I find this a sort of embodied sense of Tsur Olamim, the eternal rock, a connection to the history of the earth of which we are a part. And it's a meditation that uses our body to indicate geologic time. So begin by setting an intention to cultivate a feeling in the body rather than an intellectual understanding, but a feeling in the body for the vastness of geologic time. So begin by feeling the bottoms of your feet. And take them to symbolize the earliest moments in the formation of Earth over 4 billion years ago. That's the sole of your feet, the earliest moments in the formation of Earth. Now bring your attention to your ankles and then halfway up your calves. At this midway point, picture the dynamic early solar system when meteorites bombarded the planets. And now come up to the knee joint, which stands for the oldest rocks that survive today. The knee's synovial fluid signifies the water vapor that condensed at this time to form Earth's early global ocean. Now bring the attention upward to the thighs, which represent the evolution of the earliest life on Earth, simple, single-celled organisms. In the distance for time metaphor, approximately halfway up the length of the body, the pelvic bones mark the establishment of an oxygen-rich atmosphere. Continuing to proceed upward along the length of the body, the navel marks where the first single-celled life containing distinct organelles evolved. At the height of the chest is the spot that corresponds to the flourishing of, finally, soft-bodied, multicellular life. Moving up to the neck, you can envision the first appearance of animals with hard parts, trilobites and invertebrates that populated the seas. And along the length of only one head, from the mouth to the eyes to the forehead and the scalp, we traverse the more familiar stages in Earth history, the ages of fishes, and then reptiles, and finally mammals. A skull cap of ice represents the last global age. So just take a moment, just feeling the body, feeling this incredible span of geologic time along your body. And know that in our bodies, in the minerals in our bodies, are traces of this history. Earth in us, God in us, rock in us. And when you're ready, you can come back to your seat. So that is what I have prepared. I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes if folks have questions about the book. I'm putting my website in the chat. You can go find it there. Yeah, I'd love to, if there's questions or folks have read the book and have questions or haven't read the book, or if Margaret has anything you wanted to share.
Thank you for this. So incredibly beautiful. I have put in the chat, as I told Rabbi Spitzer before you all came in, I think this is one of my favorite quotes from the book. And if you have not yet got your own copy, now you know what you're going to do this summer. But this beautiful quote, can you all see it there? And if Rabbi Toba, if you see it, if you would read that quote to us in your voice, I would love that.
Sure. Let me find it here. If we think of God as a mighty river flowing in the direction of justice and love, then one key component of spiritual practice is to put ourselves in alignment with that flow.
was meant to be that you were here.